Let's just take a kind of journey back to Wednesday evening now, because Rosabelle from BCFM here, the Latin Window show, was down there, and what she did is she just spoke to as many people as she could and got a bit of a flavour of what happened. So it's about 10 minutes long, but now let's go back to Wednesday evening, back to sunny Castle Park, and find out what it was all about.
I'm here to show solidarity with protesters across the world and to protest against another Tory government. We're fighting against austerity and we want to stop it in its tracks now.
What concerns me is we've got a Tory government who are the very people who are responsible for the kind of crisis that we're in the first place. And now these people, instead of taking the responsibility of cause the crisis, they're now blaming immigrants, they're blaming the poor, they're blaming the vulnerable, they're blaming people who can't afford to pay rent, they're blaming the homeless, people with disabilities. In other words, they really just want to kick the poor. And I think it's a disgrace. I think it's absolutely abominable. And I think people have recognised that, and I think people are going to fight this government for the next 5 years until we get a real alternative. Polling on the issue.
They've immediately announced yet further attacks on the ability to protest, strikes as well, cutting benefits. It's very clear what this government is about, and it is about destroying the working classes.
Well, I voted SNP, so obviously in Scotland it feels incredibly democratic, but that's a kind of hangover from the referendum. And in local elections in Scotland we do have PR, and we've had PR for some time, and it works really, really well. Every morning there's a new announcement, and this is just the first week. What is it going to be like in year 3, 4, 5? It's quite horrendous.
It's the cutting of public sector, really. The NHS and fire brigades and everything, they're tearing apart the whole system of that, and it's really devastating for the people.
Mainly the NHS, I think. I just think it's absolutely outrageous. All our ancestors fought so hard to get the NHS, and it's a really amazing thing, and we all need it. Everybody in the country needs it. So why people have voted against it just is baffling to me, and I don't think people realise. I don't think the people that voted for Tories actually realise that that's what they're voting for. I think there needs to be much better media coverage of what the parties actually stand for and what they're actually doing.
We want human rights! 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 We want human rights!
Lots of people have come here to protest against this Tory government and all the austerity cuts that they planned. It's really great because instead of people being despondent, people are actually being galvanised to resist and to fight. It's all based on this market, which is putting more and more money is going up to the top to a handful of people, and it's the people at the bottom who are having to suffer the consequences of it. They're practically giving our National Health Service away to their friends. There's so many of these Tory politicians have got shares in all these private medicine companies, and they're all making money out of it. I mean, it's just totally corrupt.
The level of austerity in this country has got to an unmanageable level, really.
We don't think that the government are going to help artists at all. We know that for a fact. Yeah. Arts funding is cut to the core already.
I've lived under a Tory government before. I've had a business under the Tory government. I've lived through the recession that they brought on after the last time they were in power for 3 terms, and it was an absolute nightmare, and I can't handle the idea of it happening again. There is no future for our children, whether they're educated or not. The way the economy works at the moment, as we all know, is detrimental to the environment, and I don't need a lot to live, just the basics.
It's an amazing turnout, something that was organised so spontaneously. While I'm in radical opposition to the Tory spending cuts, they are based on an economically illiterate policy designed only to transfer wealth from public hands to the hands of the rich corporate institutions that back them. Austerity has been unanimously rejected across Europe and in the United States, which is a very heavily capitalist country, because it simply doesn't work. The austerity project is based on 2 academic bits of research, both of which have been debunked since the initial onslaught of cuts back in 2010. They've been debunked by institutions, not massive radical lefty institutions, but by the International Monetary Fund, which is one of the sort of international bastions of capital. My husband was born with a birth defect, which means that he requires very extensive surgery about once every 10 years. Without the NHS, he would never have been born. He would certainly not be alive today. And I am absolutely petrified that the war on the NHS that is being waged by this Conservative government is going to kill him in the future. The NHS is there for everyone. It is one of the things about being British that we can be truly proud of. And they are desperate to cut it up into little pieces and sell it off to their corporate friends and to large American multinational health companies, which will be of enormous detriment to the ordinary people of Britain.
Come back! Fight back! Come back! Fight back! You say come back! We say fight back! Come back! Fight back! Come back! Fight back! You say come back! We say fight back!
Well, to stop the Tories having so many cuts when they give breaks to bankers and the elite. They're screwing the poor to save the rich, and we're not having any more of it. We've got to save the NHS from being privatised. We've seen it in America. Private health systems don't work, so we've got to stop that before it starts. I'm trying to stop Trident as well. 2-pronged attack, not a 3-pronged attack.
I'm here because we need to fight against austerity, which is going to hurt the most vulnerable in our society. I'm a councillor for the Green Party, so everything I stand for is against what the Conservatives stand for. We must protect our NHS and stop it from being sold off. We must fight against the bedroom tax, and we must fight against all the benefit cuts that will hurt the most vulnerable in society, and housing cuts when nobody has anywhere to live. We are running out of time to actually tackle climate change, and if we don't do it in the next 5 years, we may well miss our opportunity.
I feel very strongly about the constant cuts that are being made to the NHS and other services that we really need. I also work in the homeless sector, and I cycle to work, and the amount of people that are on the streets, like sleeping in bags in doorways, so I'm here to, I'm sort of standing up and kind of marching with my feet, as it were. What's happening with benefits, the sanctions, also what's going to happen, what's going to become of the NHS as well. That really concerns me.
I think the majority of the population have actually not endorsed the Tory plans for cuts. So I don't think it's fair that the rest of us get imposed something that we haven't actually voted for. I don't just think the cuts are sort of unpleasant and unfair. I also just think they're bad economics. It's not the way to get our economic system working again. It's really just an excuse from the Tories to try and force more privatisation upon us and reduce the size of the state, which is a political agenda they have anyway, which has nothing to do with the actual health and long-term economic sustainability of our country.
I'm marching against the Tories, really, not just austerity. This is the kind of part of their austerity thing, selling off all these good things like the national parks, the NHS, the BBC. It's just criminal. There's not going to be anything left of this country if we don't stop them. I was really gutted that they got in again.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are marching against austerity, which is amazing in itself. And look how many people are on the streets today, thousands upon thousands. For us, we're raising awareness about the Hunting Act. David Cameron has promised to bring a repeal on the Hunting Act if he gets into power, and which he has done. He's a keen hunter himself. We're part of Bristol Hunt Saboteurs, and we're here today to have our voices heard and let people know that if you try and hunt, you'll be opposed on every level.
Most of the people who are here, and a large proportion of the population of Bristol and the UK, I'm really upset about the outcome of the recent election, the attacks on the people of this country that are already being threatened, the repeal of human rights, the attacks on the NHS, the problems that we're going to see in terms of the treatment of asylum seekers. I just think that there's a lot of reasons why we all need to come together, not be despondent, but think about how we can organise and how we can try and work together to protect each other and try and make sure that we can defend our public services. The way that we currently vote doesn't work, but I also think that the political system that we have isn't working. I think even with proportional representation, what we see is huge huge populations within this country that feel disenfranchised. Even if they are allowed to vote, they feel like it's meaningless to them. So I think we need to talk more broadly about politics and about the changes that we need to make in our understanding of politics. The one key turning point has got to be the NHS. I'm really concerned about the cuts in welfare, but what I don't see is a way for the Tories to be able to privatise the welfare system. With the NHS, once it's privatised, we're going to really struggle to get this service back.
The Tories are the problem, not the poor. The Tories are the problem, not the poor. The Tories are the problem, not the poor.
After this election, I felt very angry. I didn't feel my voice has been represented in Parliament because of the political system, and I feel that it's over-representing a certain element in society. I feel that we need to stand up and make our voices be heard against the dominant ideology that is austerity. I think austerity is an excuse to make the rich richer and the poor poorer, and I have to make myself heard. We need to protect our welfare system, otherwise in 5 years we'll be looking back and thinking, where has the safety net gone? People will get ill and their whole lives will fall apart, like in America. We need to look after people. How are the rich contributing to austerity? It's all about cutting things from the poor. The media don't portray it, we don't see it, but we need to look after people who are vulnerable. We can do that.
All of the cuts, everything that the Tories do now is going to affect my child and her life from now on and the future.
I could not believe the decision of this country. When I fell asleep during the election results, I planned to stay up all night. I woke up to find that we have not just got a Tory government, but no opposition in terms of like a majority. And just, oh my God, it's like, how did that happen? The past 5 years have been the worst things that have happened to this country, not just to this country, but the offshoots of people of Palestine. We've got David Cameron have been now just turned out funding Israel to the tune of, was it £30 billion last year for their army to commit genocide on the Palestinian people. That's only one issue. We, as the people, I work as a support worker. My clients have got nothing. Their welfare benefits have been stripped, and have constantly been stripped away. It's going to get worse and worse. Our NHS has been sold off. Our NHS, like what makes this country great. I mean, this country has been run by criminals. They've been run by the banksters, I call them. Banksters. The 1% of the people who own the money in this country increased their wealth by 100% over the past 10 years. Doubled their wealth. The people at the bottom of the scale have lost everything. Lost your benefits, lost your right to disability. But this government are criminals. So I'm here today. I brought my children up. We came up here to stand up, and hopefully we'll continue to stand up. This is going to get worse. The cuts are going to get worse. The privatisation of the NHS is going to get worse. We all have to stand up. Every single one of us. Stand together.
The Tories, they won the election, but we don't have to like their policies. You have to respect the people's voting, but it doesn't mean you have to like it. And I think demonstrating peacefully against that is a good thing to do. And I think everybody who disagrees should come down here and say so.
If they take the Human Rights Act away, we can't even do this. Can't march. I wouldn't mind austerity if the austerity was evenly distributed throughout the population. However, it's being unfairly visited on the
more disadvantaged people are becoming even more disadvantaged. We need to make sure that doesn't happen.
And I'm joined in the studio, as I said, by Hannah Patterson and Megan Flaherty. Now, did you actually manage to go around and chat to people who turned up? And what did you think of the reaction to the event that you started? Effectively, as a kind of Facebook thing that kind of snowballed.
Well, I don't know, as organisers we didn't really get to talk to many people, which was a shame. Definitely, it was really nice hearing all the things that people had to say. I kind of want to go give everyone a hug now, a little bit. I don't know, Hannah, do you want to?
I mean, we had like really positive responses from everyone. Like people sort of came up to us, like hugging us, saying like thank you. We actually heard that someone said that they felt suicidal following the result of the election, and now they feel hopeful, which is just amazing.
That's so lovely.
To know that we managed to put something together that really made that much of a difference to people's lives.
Now, a lot of people might wonder, how do you actually cope with something like that does snowball? Did you find it was actually okay? Did you have any negotiations with the police about the route you were going to take, all that sort of thing? Because that must have rather shocked you when you realised actually quite a lot of people, maybe even 4,000 or so, may come along to our event.
Yeah, it was overwhelming to say the least, because we only had 72 hours to do it. Everything was so last minute. We finalised the route with the police about half an hour before we left. But they were so lovely and they were so cooperative and they were so supportive. Yeah, that's definitely the word I was looking for.
Well, the interesting thing, of course, is that the police have lost a lot of officers, haven't they? 600 have lost their livelihood since the coalition government came in 2010. So in a way, they're kind of, they might actually. I mean, there have been police demonstrations over the last few years in London, for example. And so, did you at any point think, well, actually, this is a little bit going to be a bit too big for us, or did you manage to cope okay?
No, we're fine.
I think, we can
we can do it.
Well, yeah,
why
exactly.
not? Yeah.
Ultimately, though, I mean, this is a group, and what you've set up is against austerity. It's always nice to be fighting for something positive rather than against something trying to stop it. So, I'll ask you for an awkward question, Hannah. But first of all, what kind of world do you want to see?
I want to see a world where people aren't struggling to survive and people aren't worried where their next meal's going to come from, whether they're going to be called into work, how they're going to sort out childcare because they're on a 0-hour contract. I don't want to live in a world where the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. I want it to be a place that's a nice and happy place and a survivable place for people to live, like not just survivable, like a positive place for people to live. Happy.
Megan, what about you? What's your vision for the future?
Like I said, it would just, I know this sounds quite hippie, but it would just be nice for everyone just to be happy and not to have these daily struggles with money concerns, and if, the NHS becomes an issue, all of this, it's pointless. It would just be nice if everyone could be happy.
Yeah, and just like to add to that as well, it's not really something that we can do overnight or anything like that, but just somewhere where people are free from oppression and persecution as well. Definitely
equality. I think we need to add that in there.
Old Labour Oxford economist Martin Summers. This is about money. A lot of it is about money. The government says there's not enough to go around, and I remember a couple of years ago you quoted Mr. Micawber, didn't you, from Charles Dickens, saying maybe you could give me the quote. I think it's something along the lines of
annual expenditure 20 shillings and sixpence, annual income 20 shillings, result misery. So annual income, yes.
And if you're getting a little bit more, even if it's a shilling more a year, more than you need, it's happiness. So what's happened is we've gone below that line, haven't we? There's people just do not have enough. I mean, it's horrible to say this, that some people out there don't have enough money to buy toilet paper, basic things like this.
Yeah, well, I think one of the most telling things was somebody mentioning in the clip there the economic illiteracy of what's going on. Everybody can sense how unfair it is, but ultimately, of course, it's just silly. Austerity has only survived because of quantitative easing. They've been basically running the money press and pushing interest rates to zero so that they can carry on cutting public expenditure. What they should do is allow the market to work in terms of the banks and increase public expenditure in order to balance the negative effects of the banks.
But that's going to be no good if the banks collapse, is it? I mean, that's going to make matters even worse.
Well, the thing is that it's too. I mean, Simon Wren Lewis, who's an economics professor from Oxford University, wrote in the London Review of Books a couple of months ago, pointing out, and the whole basis of the article was saying, well, in the universities, everybody knows that what they're doing is wrong. And there's a quote here from one of the things we're going to discuss in a minute. A poll of leading economists showed that 2/3 believed that George Osborne's austerity programme had been bad for the economy. The Centre for Macroeconomics polled 50 economists, asking them whether they agreed that the government's deficit reduction strategy had a positive impact on growth and employment. 1/3 disagreed, a further third strongly disagreed, only 15% agreed, with none strongly agreeing. In other words, in the university economics departments, they know that what Osborne is doing is idiotic. But, of course, in the City of London, they love it. and they are the ones who call the shots.
Well, it's not just them; it's the media too, isn't it?
They control the media.
A lot of these people, these critical views of the economy, don't get into the media. Like Professor Steve Keen, who was on this show a few weeks ago, he was saying what we need is this Copernican revolution in economics, because there's a sort of groupthink where all the economists are stuck in the idea that, and as he said it in his words, that the whole entire financial infrastructure, that is the financial services sector, doesn't actually have any effect. It's all neutral.
Well, that's what the textbooks say. So there's three levels to this. One is that the mainstream economists are wrong from Steve Keen's point of view, but even they think Osborne is wrong. So, it's what Simon Wren Lewis calls macro media. The whole thing, the whole emphasis upon the deficit. That's a minor part. It's like talking about your car engine and talking only about spark plugs. There's all the other bits of the engine. There's the carburettor. There's the wheels. There's all of the rest of the car. And what happens with this obsession with the deficit is it's basically a con, frankly.
Daniela, the Green Party, are you going to be able to do anything about this? I mean, now you've got some more councillors, but you only got one. You haven't got any more extra MPs. What's the Green Party actually going to be able to do, and what's your vision?
Well, our vision is to carry on with what Martin said, actually emphasise that the whole... I mean, that's why I got involved in politics, because I recognise the whole economic system is wrong. You look at the economy is still completely based on consumer debt. Consumer debt is massive, if you include mortgages and things like that. There's the productivity problem, there's all sorts of problems. I think we're just going to be campaigning, and the fact that we're getting bigger and stronger means that more people are going to have to listen to us, because we've got a democratic legitimacy. So we're going to talk endlessly and boringly about the economic system and how terrible it is. We're also going to talk about really important issues like the homelessness problem, the housing situation in this country, which the government has the completely wrong way of dealing with it. And it keeps saying there's a problem with supply of land, but actually the house builders can't build enough because of the way they're financially constrained. As councils, we'd love to build more houses. We could build more houses. Councils used to build lots of houses, but for the stupid rules the government's put in place, and is thinking of introducing and has stupid things like the right to buy. So we're going to keep fighting on all those fronts. Well,
we were hearing just now about people feeling suicidal at the result of the election. But Martin, I mean, there is a kind of madness to it that you articulating there. Why is it that this policy, which actually seems to be detrimental to the country generally, nationally, basically run by banksters, not by politicians, but because the politicians seem to be a bit too low down the food chain. What's the motivation behind all this? There must be some kind of reason why policies are being implemented which don't actually help people. For example, in Iceland, which is roughly the same population as Bristol and the surrounding area, what they've done is they've just put a few bankers in jail, they've cancelled a few criminal debts, and they're now back on the recovery. And there's nobody in Iceland who's suffering with a sort of situation wwhere they have to sleep in shop doorways, for example.
Well, that's right. It's because you've got a more direct democracy in Iceland. They've got one of the oldest democracies in the world, and they're only 300,000 people, and they dealt with things in a much more firm and sensible fashion than we've done.
So what's the motive behind the madness, I suppose?
I think the point is that the quantitative easing has kept the share prices high for all these companies. Right. It's propped up the whole stock exchange because that's where the money's gone. It's not gone into companies actually investing, and I think that's what's behind this story about productivity, because companies haven't been investing in training or equipment or anything to make themselves into better, more efficient entities or better producing more stuff. They've just been employing more people cheaply. So the money has gone into financial services, into banks and financial markets. And that's where all the money's gone. The money hasn't disappeared. It's gone into people's pockets.
Well, and then to the Cayman Islands and Jersey, where we can't get it. But it is our money.
Yes.
That's the fundamental point.
Okay, before we move on and say goodbye to Hannah Patterson and Megan Flaherty, I just want to leave the last word with you on this subject. Do you think that there really is hope for the next 5 years? Hannah, first?
Well, I hope there's hope. I mean, that's something that we'd really like to sort of try and help inspiring people by the work that we're doing and we plan on doing. We know that the coalition did paint a really bleak picture for people. I mean, homelessness went up by 50% and there were 66 active food banks before the coalition. Now there are 421, and I mean that doesn't paint an amazing picture for the next 5 years, but we really want to try and inspire hope and try and cushion the impact of the horrendous austerity measures as much as we can. So that will mainly be in Bristol. We want to support food banks and support shelters and women's shelters and just do the best that we can to try and keep people's hope and morale up.
And Megan, how do listeners follow what you're up to? I mean, you've started some sort of Facebook group, but is it just online?
Yes.
How do people follow what you're doing?
Well, we will keep our Facebook page updated. We'll probably post in the event as well. The previous
Isn't it just called Bristol Against Austerity?
Yeah, that's the one. I think we're thinking about making a Twitter account, but
Yeah, we
that's
are.
not confirmed right
Ooh,
yet.
crikey.
I know,
We've got our A-levels.
Yeah, we do have A-levels right now. So I mean, we're gonna have to put this on the back burner a little bit, so that we can actually have a future.
But that's not for long.
Not
They
yet.
will be overseen.
Okay, so watch out, folks,
Yeah,
for the end of the
definitely.
summer and the end of the A-levels, and Megan and Hannah may well be back. But anyway,
definitely.
thanks ever so much for coming in, and thanks
Thank
also
you for having us.
for organising a real political event, which is not actually inside some BBC TV studio or in the Houses of Parliament. It's out on Castle Park.